the numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zero. With me in Deadbug Studios is
Coach Nez.
Visit us at zpnetwork.com, zoixonline.com. We're on Facebook at the Nothing Shocking Podcast community fan page and the Quad Cities Rock and Roll Junkies interest group. We're also on Twitter at NoShockPod. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and all your podcatchers. Rate and review the show as well. We'll read any reviews on the air and let us know if you sent a review in case we miss it. What am I forgetting? Our sponsors are...
Yeah, our sponsors are Ragged Records, Davenport, Iowa, and Rock Island, Illinois. New and used, we have Legends Picks, Guitar Picks out of Milan, Illinois, and RockstarPicks.rocks out of Queens, New York.
And as always, I want to thank the band Hong Kong Sleepover for letting us use their music. They got a new album out. Check them out on Apple Music and all their other music catchers, whatever they call those, Spotify and Amazon. Our guest this week
Jeff Pinkus. Butthole Surfers, the Melvins.
Played with everybody in that, especially in that, those two genres, industrial post-punk kind of thing. It was just really interesting. He had some fun, I don't know, the double bass thing.
Well, yeah, when I saw the Melvins this past August, right, in 2018, or the beginning of the school year, it was him on bass as well as Steve and Shane McDonald on bass, dueling bass guitars, Buzz on vocals, lead guitar, and then Dale Crover on drums. It was really loud, extremely loud.
I'm good. I get to see them at the Louder Than Life Festival in Louisville, Kentucky in a few months.
Sweet.
Looking forward to
You won't be disappointed.
Well, unless they're playing at the same time as someone else that my wife wants to see. Yeah. That's what I'm most worried about is there's just a handful of bands we really want to see, and they're all like right in a row.
Yep.
And it's going to be like Dropkick Murphys here, Ice Cube's going to be over here, Andrew WK is going to be over there, probably the Melvins over here.
Right.
And I don't know, we'll see how that all plays
That
out.
reminds me of a friend. He went to Riot Fest, and this has got to be about 4 or 5 years ago. The Cure was playing, and Weezer were playing on opposite stages, and I believe the Cure were playing Fast Disintegration album, and he walked away from the Cure to go see Weezer. I said, "Have you lost your mind?" But that's just me, and everybody different strokes for different folks.
I wonder who had more people there. Which audience was bigger. It's hard for me to. Weezer was. Not a big fan, but they had a pretty huge audience. But so does the Cure.
That global
curious.
Audience that the Cure has.
Well, right, but it's Chicago.
Yeah.
So.
But that's still a hub for
Right. I'm just curious. That'd have been interesting to know. I had a similar thing happen to me, and I'm just stupid. I should have known this. I went to the Orion Festival that Metallica put on in Detroit, and there was this band called Dahan. Well, that was the name of the actor in the movie they released. That whatever it was, Through the Never, that live thing they did.
Sure.
I didn't even think about that. So I'm watching Dropkick Murphy over on the main stage, and then right before they go into the shipping out to Boston, they go, we have to let you guys know this, but Metallica's about to go play Kill 'Em All in its entirety over there on the side stage. We're going to keep playing, but if you got to go, I understand.
So everybody just evacuate.
I stayed, though. And then I kind of slowly walked over to, because it was ridiculous. We're at that little tiny stage where they played it at.
Right.
But yeah, that's one of the things that sucks about the festivals. That said, Chicago Open Air Festival is coming to Bridgeview, Illinois. I think that's the name of the town.
SeatGeek Stadium?
SeatGeek Stadium, where the Chicago Fire play, Tool, System of a Down, Ghost, The Cult, Gojira in this moment. It's a fantastic lineup. I'm not sure how many stages they're going to have there because it's not as many bands as there was the previous time.
Right.
there might be a little bit of that side stage stuff. But I had a blast when I went a couple years before. I hope we get to go this year. Just a fantastic lineup, and I can't wait. If you want to get your tickets, you can get them in the show notes at zpnetwork.com. Click on this episode, and there's a link to buy tickets there.
Sweet.
And in the future episode, we're going to have Gary Spivak, one of the bookers, the guy who books it. We've done the interview already. We just have to cut it up and kind of release it closer to the release date. But yeah, you can look forward to that coming out in a few weeks as well. What am I forgetting? Record Store Day, right?
Yeah, it was this past Saturday. What was that? April 13th? Yeah, Saturday, April 13th. I went down to Ragged Records about 9:30, so I didn't stand in line outside. And the Vanishing Kids were playing down there. And if you're not familiar with the Vanishing Kids, they're out of Madison, Wisconsin. Jason Hartman was on the show. He did an intro with us when they were preparing the new album. And they have it out, and he gave me a free copy on gold vinyl, and they sounded fantastic.
That's cool.
Yeah, he gave me the shirt. I bought the vinyl, and then I also bought 2 of Joey Belladonna's solo albums on CD. So
nice.
Yeah,
I went a little later in the day just because I had other things going on that morning, and I picked up Motley Crue's "Girls, Girls, Girls," like the original pressing, for $10 more than it's worth, but it was still.
yeah.
Does he listen to our show?
Who's that?
Bob from Rag Records. And then I got Dream Theater's Metropolis Part 2, The Scenes of Memory, the vinyl, as well as Operation Mindcrime from Queensryche, some 2 prog rock, whatever they call it. What do they call those concept albums? There you go.
Yeah, Operation Mindcrime. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I feel like I got something else too, and I can't remember what it was.
I do that all the time. I went to Co-op too, and I bought something. I can't remember what I purchased.
Man, what was it? I don't even remember. But I mean, I was there for a while. I kept looking around. There's this band called like King Gizzard and something. I don't know. They're a weird proggy band.
Sure.
And they're fairly new, and they had like 17 albums there, and they're all it's like I don't even know. The last album they released, they didn't even release it. They gave you all the data so you could press your own record and do your own artwork. So,
weird. Yeah, that's unique.
Those weird little, I don't know, bands. My friend turned me on to them, and I hated them at first because it was like I just rather listen to King Crimson, but they slowly kind of grow on you. They're very repetitive though. But I don't know. I enjoy Record Store Day, and I wish I could get out to the record store more. But
the problem is with the Record Store Day, it's so congested, and the line goes all the way past where you're trying to look at CDs, and it's a great thing, but a lot of the time I get really annoyed while I'm there because I can't look at anything because everybody's standing in the way. So
yeah, they're watching the band,
yep.
and then even getting in line stuff.
Yep.
But that is our intro. Let's throw it over to Jeff Pinkus.
Absolutely. Good night. Hey, Jeff, it's Eric Nesbitt from the Nothing Shocking.
How you doing?
Good. Hey,
you're a minute late, man.
I'm
kidding.
I apologize about that. We were having a discussion about some bands that are coming here locally, but I want to introduce you to my co-host, Bob Zerl.
How are you?
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Well, hey, last time I saw you playing live, you came to our hometown, Rock Island, Illinois, down at Ribco, and you were with Melvins, and you guys were doing the whole dueling bass guitar live show. I guess the thing is that I walked out of that show that night, I think trying to dig my eardrums out because it was so loud. I guess,
can relate.
Yeah. Before we got to get into the nuts and bolts, I just want to kind of ask you right from the get-go. You don't see that ever happen with bands doing two bass guitars on stage. How did that all come about?
Well, I guess it started a long time before when Jared was playing with them.
And I said something in passing. I said, "Hey, man, let me be your second bass player." And I said, "I'll play rhythm. He can play lead. And we'll just do one album," I said. And I was just, kind of joking, but of course it'd be fun to do. And they'd done double drums before and double guitar. So I think that kind of stuck with him. And we've been friends, me and Dale especially, for a long time. And, we toured together with Altamont and my other band, Honky. So, and he plays in Honky as well sometimes. So it just, I guess, when Jared had a baby on the way, he had gone to Spawn, they needed me for the 30th year anniversary. And then I played with him for a while. And then Steven started playing with him. And then the whole double bass thing came in because we were going to do a Pinkus abortion technician EP of just basically, it was kind of a misunderstanding. I thought that it was going to be a bigger recording than he originally thought it was going to be. So I said, "Okay, great. I have a few songs." And he said, "Yeah, I think Steven has some." And he would just do cover songs, I believe, and just put an EP out on AMRAP. And then we ended up with a full-length album that we did with the double bass stuff. And at the same time that the double bass that I came into town to record, Steven was a little behind on the other album that they finished, Love and Death, and he was playing catch up on that from being on an off tour. So he was doing they'd completed 11 songs before I got there, and then all of a sudden he was supposed to learn and play on mine as well. So I think he was a little overwhelmed at the beginning, and so more of our gelling happened, from playing live. And Buzz wanted to, like I said, he's done double drums, double guitar. Why not double bass?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's even talking about doing it with stand-up bass and an electric bass player. So that'd be Trevor Dunn and one of the many choices they have in the stable of bass players.
Well,
I know I'm number one. I'm number one chair banjo. I can tell you that, but I might be somewhere third or fourth chair bass. I'm not sure about that.
Well, the thing is that I noticed is that your style of play between you and Steven, obviously you have your own style. When you have such styles that are so different from each other, how do you guys make that a cohesive thing as you did?
Man, it's pretty organic, man. I came up with a word for while we were up there. It was called dissonance, and it's a combination of distance and dissonance, and that's kind of what we did a lot of when we started out. We didn't know what each other were going to play, and then we'd hear something, and then it would lock with us, and then we'd talk about a certain part or something that we heard that could sit together. A lot of times, I just finished my band practice with my band Pure Luck, and our saying in that, because we attempted to sing like songbirds and do harmonies, but the last one to show up for practice has to sing the highest harmony. And it seems like Steven's always that guy. He has to do the high parts on bass. He had to do the high parts on vocals because he's really good at it, both of them. But, we had totally different styles. I think that's what worked. I'm a little bit more, he plays, he's very well learned and definitely plays a little bit more by the rules sometimes. But this definitely got him out of his box. But, worried about scales and tuning and stuff like that, which are not necessarily so important to me. But it was great. We both learned from each other, and we both picked up little parts from each other. And tone wise, I'm playing like Grand Funk, and he's trying to play like Paul McCartney. So it's an interesting blend. We even had the same amps and cabinets at the end of it, and it sounded so totally different from each other, even with the same equipment.
Absolutely. I tell you what, it was such a. I told my buddies that I was with, I felt like I was in a minor earthquake during that show because it was so loud.
Perfect.
So
yeah, I quit wearing my in-ears, and I didn't really have any good earplugs to wear, and so I was just using regular earplugs. And when I realized that that's how loud, and Buzz sometimes doesn't wear earplugs. I was like, the first day I was like, "Are y'all always this loud?" And I was one of them, I guess. But yeah, it was an eye opener. You just get numb to it, and then I'm sure I lost a little bit of hearing in my left ear since that was the side I was on. But Buzz, he plays with not a lot of people know his style, but he's got a very interesting style with his pickups, and he's got one that's really low output, and so he plays a lot between those two things, so he can go switch tones really quickly. So from the beginning of the set to the end of the set, usually he's blended some stuff up that really, and I'm sure our sound man, John, makes a complete cyclone of guitar wall of noise inside the room. And we had him on both sides. His speakers were on both sides of of Dale's drum kit. And so, which was kind of awkward for him because he usually stands in front of it and plays a lot with the feedback to get different tones. So he had to relearn how to do that kind of stuff as well. But I think he was up for the challenge.
Absolutely.
Handled it like a champ.
Yeah, and you guys had the blues explosion opening up for you. So how much did you guys have to amp up your game with an opener like that?
Oh, it was fun. Yeah, it was right after we toured with Shit Kid. So I went from reliving my 25-year-old life to all of a sudden seeing what it's going to be like in about 5 years. So it was interesting between all of us. Those were seasoned musicians, and these were young, fun, just like getting into the biz and doing it for whatever reason that they want to do it, and they're really good at it. So everybody's got their own style, and you gotta, I think it's great to have any band that's gonna push your game up. And I'm a little partial to also sound differences. Like I don't like blasting people's ears out before my band plays. I don't like people to hear like three bands with really bad guitar tones turned all the way up to where they can't even tell what song we're playing. So there's something to be said about kind of volume control in that sense. But as far as energy and playing wise, yeah, it's usually the Melvins pick a band that's different anyways, but very powerful. And if they don't like them, they're not taking them on the road. And I think this next tour is going to be them and Red Cross, and Red Cross has a new album out. And so Dale and Steven will be playing in both bands, which I've done before with Honky, where Dale played with me and Bobby and Honky, and then me and Dale, of course, did the Melvins, but that was on the double drum tour, and a little bit on the single drum tour.
I guess here's the next question I have is the last few years between 2012 to 2018, you've been a part of album release with Honky, Areola 51, the Melvins, Pure Luck, and your own solo work. And that's a lot of studio time. How do you keep up with your sanity and, with that kind of intense recording schedule?
Well, I don't really think of it that way at all. In fact, I think I'm kind of lax. I see the way that Buzz and Dale and them work, and they have a studio, which I have one too, but not for full-on bands. We do have one in our family of bands that we can record at, so that makes it easier. But I really seem, to me, I seem to take all this time off to be inspired by stuff and to enjoy life so much that, now that I've got this little chance to do so. And to me, that's not much. That just means like traveling a little bit or doing ayahuasca in Peru or stuff like that. I just, I feel like I'm not hitting it as hard as I should hit it. But, I love doing, I think everybody's got different sides of themselves, and to be in one band and not change your tone and just do that for your whole career, it just seems so bizarre and foreign to me when we all have, way different things to put out there and different sides of us to express. None of us are just happy or sad. There's emotions of so many different sides. So it's great to have the opportunity just to put everything out, whatever style, whatever way you want to do it.
What is your favorite part of the whole thing? Is it the touring? Is it the recording? Do you like the creating or the performing better, or do you need both?
I like both. I mean, there's an adrenaline rush you get. I mean, I've done skydiving, and I like adrenaline rushes, I guess. So it's definitely like when you feed off of the energy of a crowd for good or for bad, which is very like when you're doing solo banjo. You have no one to congratulate if the show's good, and you have nobody to console you when you fuck it all up. So it's a total different vibe, But I'm sorry, I kind of got sidetracked there. But yeah, I can't remember where I was going with that. Sorry.
That's all right.
No problem. Do you want to go, Bob? Do you want me to go?
Oh, you guess.
All right, yeah. Outside of releasing that, the amount of material that you have, since 2012, you still find time to tour and play throughout the year live. Are you able to manage your time outside the music scene? I mean, do you, as far as your own personal time outside of music when you're...
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And like I said, I like to, my thing is I don't have many possessions, but I do love travel, and that's what like I wrote a song on the Melvins record that I just did with him, and it was called "Don't Forget to Breathe," and that was the male and female maestros down in Iquitos, Peru, singing what they call the caros, and we didn't record any of them, and those are just like some of the melodies that stuck in my head that I put together, and it sounded kind of bluesy to me and that, but like I said, to me, I enjoy being inspired, and those people are the humblest, most talented people I'd ever heard, and been around in my life, and very humble in the way that when I see bands that are very full of themselves and the way they treat some people, or other bands, or those kind of things, or the club. I think everybody should see some people like this who will give you a floral bath in the afternoon, do ayahuasca with you, and give you sound healing while you're all under the influence of it. Then wake up, and then they give you plant medicines and have consultations, all while sleeping in hammocks and all together in one room. That's humble and extremely talented. I think people they get a little full of themselves nowadays for no reason. You got to know more than 3 chords.
I wanted to kind of touch upon, you were talking about being involved with so many different bands and projects, and we see artists, they're involved with multiple projects because, there's like multiple reasons why. Number one, obviously the creativity, they want that creative outlet to do something different, or some artists are doing multiple bands and projects because they need to do it for financial reasons. And the artists that kind of keeps themselves in that pigeonholed in that box where they can't break free of what they do, what their main, I guess maybe their main band is. They can't kind of break away from that. I guess what is your take on being involved with so much? Is obviously it's a creative thing.
There's
for
a
you.
couple of things with that. I agree with both of the things you said about having to do it to make a living, and also the creative aspects of it. But I think the bottom line is, I started out in the business pretty young. I left home at an early age, and it was kind of, sleeping on people's floors and living with 5 people and a dog in a van for a while was a step up. And so, coming from that, I've never let possessions possess me. And I think that's what the biggest problem that, people think they have to have more than they need to. And then by the time they have that, you always want what you don't have. And I've been through it. So, I see it from my point of view. And, I think the only way, to live within your means, and luckily for me, my means, I don't need much to be happy. But, a lot of my friends, I see that very much with the toys that they have and possessions. And sometimes it's because, you need that for your family and what have you. So it's not, it's a necessity. But, I think it's a luxury to not have all the possessions. I think that changes things for you.
Absolutely. You've been a part of, you've worked with your time in Butthole Surfers and your time working with Melvins, and you've worked with some very eccentric frontmen as far as big personality goes.
You think so?
just a wee bit. I don't know. I obviously haven't done my research on Gibby or Buzz.
Neither is he.
But as far as being an artist, working with some big egos in the industry, how does that work for you? Is it second nature, or is it a challenge?
It's definitely not a challenge. I mean, I only work. I've said for a long time, and it's much to my detriment, I'm sure, that if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. And when I get asked to do these things by friends, or having the luxury and the privilege to have been in the Butthole Surfers by chance when some punk ass kid in Atlanta, Georgia, and the things it led to. It's crazy world.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Bob.
Have you always had that mentality? You know, you're not worried about possessions. You're not, you're kind of laid back and you're doing things that are fun and not. Is that something that's grown over the years, or have you kind of had that since day one?
Yeah, I guess I probably always had it. I just didn't know what it was. I practice it and cherish it every day now, though.
Because that's such a. I mean, you look at bands that are. So many young musicians, they want to be the Rolling Stones or Metallica or something huge, and it really, if you can, I don't want to say lower the bar because that's not what, but not worry about success, but more chase the art. I'd
say be realistic is one thing. Like to me, with my solo banjo, it's a really intimate thing that I do, and I love it when I do it with a small amount of people. And like when I die, I'm gonna have friends, and when they want to listen to, if they want to hear me play something while they make coffee in the morning, it'll be like I'm sitting in the room with them playing. And I've always figured myself, like you said, lower the bar. I don't know. I think as a milkman and a postman and everything else, my job is to try and entertain people that usually live in my vicinity. Probably couldn't do what I do if I moved to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, something like that. But I think people need to be realistic with what they're trying to do. The whole idea of being huge is great until all of a sudden you're dealing with all these people that have never played a lick of music in their life that are making decisions. But they'll ask you questions and hope that you answer the way that they have already answered it, and that way you feel like you're a part of it. It's not a fun way to do music. Again, getting back to fun, but it's lucky enough to have people around where I live that are interested in me entertaining them and maybe taking their mind off of something for a minute and being able to play with all these great players that are in this town. Is really nice. I just left, 4 guys just split the house, and I'm really lucky to play with.
Here's the thing is that Butthole Surfers, Melvins, and everything else that you've been involved with, do you find it yourself as far as an artist goes and as a musician go, when you were a younger coming up artist, where do you feel like your roots as far as, your influence came from? Were you a punk rock kid from the get-go, or how did it all evolve for you?
I was really confused, man. I think I went through like a communist thing, and then I went through then when I realized what communism was, I couldn't stand it, and then I realized that I had like a hippie mohawk thing, like a long mohawk, and I was really confused for a long time. I don't know. Did a lot of Robitussin, a lot of acid, a lot of blue gel acid back in the day. Me and my friends explored with that stuff quite a bit. So we were out there, and we embraced the odd and the weird. And I guess we had a place we lived at that was about 7 of us living in the 2-bedroom apartment that we called the bakery. And because we all got baked all the time, I guess. But, I did finish school, even though I didn't live at home. They found out I wasn't there. Actually, I was on acid and had to talk to the counselor. And he had told me that he knew I didn't live at home, and so I couldn't go finish school there. So I finished at a community college for 2 semesters. I was determined to do that, but I was a fuck-up at the same time. I was a functioning fuck-up.
So, I guess as you say that, where does as a young artist you kind of touched upon you get into the Butthole Surfers? How did that come about for you?
Well, I played in the Atlanta scene for a while. They decided they took a chance and spun a globe basically, and when the finger landed, it was Athens, Georgia, and so they went out there, and that was right before I met them. And they were having a pretty tough time at that point. They were living out in the middle of nowhere and no furniture. King has funny stories about that. But then they moved to Atlanta, or they kind of weren't moving there. They just kind of located there for a little bit. And they were staying at the Metroplex. And I was living in Atlanta. And one of my friends suggested me when they were looking for a bass player. And he was down at the Metroplex. It was actually the guitar player from my band, Daddy Longhead, from a long time ago. And so I went over there and tried out. I had 2 ex-girlfriends came and picked me up at the same time, which is always weird. And they took me out there, and I had a little bottle of Heaven Hill whiskey and leather jacket on with a blue circle for the Germs GI on the back, and I played Blue Cheer, Black Sabbath songs, and a couple. I think I played Mexican Caravan and one of the other songs that they had. And that was pretty much the first practice. And then they said, I think Paul was the one. He said, "Well, if you want to go to Europe with us, you can tour, Europe with us." I said, "Okay." And then before I left, he was like, "You can stay in the band as long as you want." And okay. And that's kind of how it went. And then I joined up with them. I was 17 at the time, 18 for my first show. And that was January 10th, 1986 in Athens, Georgia, where we opened up with the Jack Officers, which was at the time a 4-track cassette tape player with a trigger mics on it. And so we put the mics down our pants. And so every time we would hit our crotch with our hands, it would open one of the tracks of Davy and Goliath, the old episodes, the old cartoons. So we just didn't really want anyone else on stage before we played, I think, is the main idea. So we got paid for the opening band as well that way. So, probably entertaining for about maybe 2 minutes, but I think we did it for about 30.
I've heard of, I don't know if this is, internet clickbait type stuff, and was there going to be a Butthole Surfers reunion where they're going to actually get in the studio and make a new album? Do you have any knowledge of that, or is that just rumor mill type stuff?
Well, there's been stuff that's been written out there by Paul, who I speak to all the fellas in the band. All of us are on good terms with each other. Timing's not quite right for the album to come out yet. And maybe someday it will, but there's some other people are doing some other stuff. There's reasons why it can't happen, but I hope it does. We actually wrote songs. Both me and Paul had written songs, and I know Gibby had worked on some stuff. And King did a recording session with Paul, just doing drum tracks and stuff. And Paul wanted to make some tribal drum stuff, and so I think. Just timing right now isn't exactly the best for it because Gibby's finishing up on a book that he's overdue on releasing. Not the one that we just released, but an actual, I guess it's a, what do you call it? A young adult book is what it is, strangely enough. So instead of from what I can tell, from what someone told me, I guess he used to draw pictures of like a Chinese guy projecting a movie out of his penis. And for the kids, he's, I think, made it to where like snakes come out of people's arms when the arm gets pulled off, that kind of thing. But he's gonna finish doing that, and he's also loves being at home with his kid. He had a child, and he loves being around there. He's done a lot of art. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Also, you got to start getting into management stuff and questions and labels and all these things, and there's a lot more into it than just that for everybody to take as much time as it would take to do this project. It's not going to be haphazardly put together. I do have about 4 songs that I think are getting closer to being finished that Paul's even playing on some, and I'm playing on some of his. And I love the songs he's done. They're really amazing. Other than the Cocky Bitches is one of his albums, but the stuff that he's doing right now is almost like his old solo album he did a long time ago. But the songs are just amazing so far. I think they were originally probably going to be Butthole Surfer songs, but now people can look forward to that, I hope.
Cool. Very cool.
That's exciting. In terms of like eras, I mean, you've been around a long time, and with this kind of era with the social media and everything being so accessible, do you have a preference in what era that is the most fun to make music in, or do you?
Oh, hell yeah! I'm so glad I grew up before social media. I mean, if you look at the first show, one of the first shows I did in Texas was called Woodshop, which I just played with my band Pure Luck, and I did my solo thing out there. It's in Driftwood, Texas, across from the Salt Lick barbecue, and nobody had cell phones back then. So there's always that one guy that's got a nice camera. So somehow he got up on a hill and he took a picture of it was Big Boys and Butthole Surfers and everybody that was involved in music in Austin at that time. And he took a picture from up on the hill, and you just see these group. There's so many people out there for this little place, but you see all these people. Some people are helping people up. Some people are up at the front of the stage. Some people are in a group of folks just talking, but not a single cell phone. Nobody's concerned about that. It was just so beautiful to see like people what it used to be like to go out and not have that distraction or not worry about making people think that you have the best life in the world. You know, it was a lot realer. It seemed like, anyways.
I want to kind of touch upon, your 2018, your solo album that you released. It was entirely on the banjo. And, I guess the thing that kind of was kind of curious to me was the cassette tape version that you released was on Minor Bucket Records, and then the CD version was on Heavy Feather Records. How did you manage to release two different styles of media on two different record labels? How'd that work?
Well, the one that you're talking about is Minor Bucket, like a minnow, but Minner, Minner, not
Gotcha.
minor.
Oh, sorry.
But that's Danny Barnes's cassette label, and he was one that I had. He was a big inspiration for me and one of my banjo playing idols by far. He's phenomenal, and he was the one that was trying to get me to do my songs that I played on banjo and do an album so he could put it out on cassette, actually. And so, I don't know, I kind of fell in love with doing the whole project, and he inspired me to do it. And so he told me just to put it out. Heavy Feather is me and my partner's label. So he just told me I could have it after the cassettes were gone, that he just was doing it as a labor of love. And he had his order of songs that he wanted for cassette tape because, you have to turn them over. Mm-hmm. And so it was a different order and different artwork, which he did. And then I had the artwork done differently in a different order, and same mastering guy though. And Danny mixed all of them. And, so I really loved the way all the mastering guy and Danny's mixing, they work extremely well together. So I was really happy with it. But that's how that came about. Danny didn't want to own the stuff. In fact, my next album that I'm doing, or cassette tape and then CD, will be called Fungus Shui, and I'm hoping he's going to be producing it again. He says he will, but I have him come down and twiddle knobs for me when I'm down there. But everything's done live, and I played to loops that I've made on some of the songs, and I have a few effects that I like to use.
How long have you been playing banjo? I mean, what point was that the first thing, or did you start playing guitar, bass first, and then kind of pick up the banjo later? Like, what part in your?
I still can't play the banjo. As Mike Watt called me when he saw me play bass, he said one time, he goes, when we were touring with Firehose, and he looked at me, he goes, "Man, you ain't no bass player." And I looked at him like, "What?" And he goes, "You're a bass wrestler like me." So I think I've been a bass wrestler, a banjo wrestler, unfortunately sometimes even a guitar wrestler. But I started out, I had an acoustic guitar when I was a kid because my sister was a musician and she was really good. So different style of music, but she really, beautiful voice, great. I played piano too, so she had great pitch, and so I'd hear pitch a lot. And I remember not knowing how cool the song Puff the Magic Dragon was, but I didn't want to play it. So I ended up firing the guitar instructor. And then I ended up with an electric guitar, and I was playing Earth, Wind, and Fire songs, I think. I asked the guy to teach me one of those. And he was actually one of my guitar heroes from a band from Atlanta called Mother's Finest. If y'all don't know them, you should check them out. Another Mother Further. Amazing. It's like a late 70s, like mix of Zeppelin and some soul funk stuff. It's really, really cool. But I grew up down the street from them pretty much in Atlanta. But anyways, he did that. Then I went to my sister ended up confiscating the electric guitar because I probably didn't play it enough. And then I went to Rhythm City, and I remembered hearing a bass, and it made me feel like I had to take a shit. And so I was like, I like that one. And so I started playing that, and I didn't really have a desire to play guitar, and that's another reason why I like banjo. It's a way I can do songs by myself, and it's not like just strumming a guitar over the same thing that I've done on a song before. So it makes me think in my head about how I want to orchestrate it, because you can't really strum it. It doesn't ring out like a guitar. So you have to work a lot more. And when you make a mistake, it sticks out a lot more. But luckily it's an open tuning most of the time. And if you make a mistake, it's usually a harmony of what you were trying to hit.
I got one more question for you, and then we're going to leave you alone, okay? So,
right on, man.
Yeah, sorry. So the first time I saw you play live, you were with Melvins, and Les Boucherettes were opening up for you guys. And then a couple year later or so, Melvins come back, and then Steven was their bass player, and then Melvins came back again, and Steven's their bass player again, and then Melvins come back again, and now you and Steven are playing bass together. So I guess the question is, and I hope you don't mind me asking the question, so when is it that you're in the band and you're out of the band? How does that all work? And then who's the bass player and who's not the bass player? How does that all work?
Well, luckily, there's not too much on the ego front when it comes to that stuff, and I just love playing with those guys when it comes around, and it's being part of the stable with them. Like, we're planning on doing something. From what he tells me, we did some acoustic stuff for this project. They wanted to film us on a trolley in San Diego. And so it was like also I played banjo on the last Melvins record as well as bass. And so that's why I was saying I'm first chair banjo. But he actually wants to do some recording doing that, and we're talking about doing some solo touring next year with and I don't know if this will happen, but he was mentioning like me and Trevor and him, but doing solo stuff and maybe doing some songs together. But things change, and we'll see if there's time with that, because they've got such a busy schedule and so many different people they're doing projects with. Like I said, there's so many different sides to people, and Buzz wanted to get a little bit of that Butthole Surfers side into his music for a little bit, but it's not what he wants to do for the rest of his sound. And Steven adds something different, and Trevor adds something different. Everybody adds something different. And I think if you didn't want to expand, of course everybody hates everything that comes out, and then a few years later, it's not really so bad. But it's like that baby on Family Guy, and the whole house falls apart, and they show him in his crib, and he goes, "I don't like change," and I think people just don't like change. It's scary to people. But I thrive off of it, and I love it. Like I say, I'm like the redneck David Bowie, man.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, this is how this is going to work out. We're going to have this recorded, and then we're going to probably release it, in a couple weeks, Bob, you think?
Yeah.
And so then when it's released, once we get it all edited, you'll be the first one to get the interview. And please post it on your social media if you possibly could. That'd be fantastic.
Sure thing, man. Yeah, of course.
But before we let you go, is there anything else that you would like to promote or plug you got coming up, or you're performing live anywhere, or what can you tell us?
Yeah. I've actually got I can announce this because it won't be on for a couple of weeks, but I've got a solo tour coming up. I've been asked to do some shows with legendary Shack Shakers up to the Northeast. I think starting in Michigan and going around to DC, going through the Northeast area there. And so I'm going to be doing shows on the way up and the way back, which are not booked yet, but I'm working on that. And that will be summertime, and hopefully it won't be all in the South, but I have a feeling I'll end up in the South in August, which is not the smart thing to do. The Melvins would never be caught doing that. And they're very smart about where they tour and when they tour. I like that about them too. They make it real easy. But in town, I'm doing shows with Pure Luck every Thursday for free in April. We're playing 2 sets every Thursday, and there's a crawfish boil, and as I like to say, Pure Luck for free, crawfish for a fee. And it's a beautiful outdoor place out there, and we played there last year. And just a good place to go out and hang with our friends, play a couple of sets, hopefully sell a couple of, we sell PCP, THC, CDs, TVs, any kind of initial thing we sell. So hopefully we'll sell a bunch of it at the show.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you so much for participating. And like I said, I'll be in touch with you in a couple weeks with the edited version, and then we'll share it on all of our social media. Please share it on yours. And thank you so much once again.
Yeah, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate both of y'all. Thanks so much, man. Y'all have a great one.
Yeah, you have a good night, man. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
I'll be broadcasting the underdeal. When the black is rough and the sky